And okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To
to the
the
flag of the United States
States
of
of
America
America
and
and
to the republic
republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
nation,
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. We had a closed session at 6 o'clock, and there is no reportable action from that closed session. So we'll move now to public comment number 2. Michelle, do you see any hands raised, or is there anybody there who would like to speak?
If anybody would like to provide public comment, please press the raise hand feature, or if you called in, you can press *9. And Director Bernstein, I see no raised hands, so you may continue.
Okay, we'll move to item number 1 then, which is the report of the fire chief.
Good evening, board members. My fire chief's report this evening is going to be a little longer than usual, especially since a portion of it will be discussing or giving a current update on the ERAF issue. I'll leave that till the end of it. So
An analytical essay. You will hear a fact pattern of a criminal case study and determine the possible offenses, affirmative and otherwise.
if everyone could mute their computers. Right. Perfect. First things first, COVID update. So COVID, the new variant is certainly ticking up in Menlo Park Fire Protection District as it is around California. You have before you, we've had 19 new COVID positives since our last meeting. And actually, just as of today, we had 3 more. So add 3 to those numbers. So we're seeing a little bit of an uptick, not impacting our operations. We have not seen an impact on our staffing levels with our partners with AMR or an increase in ambulance wall times. And our every Monday morning or back from a 4-day testing has proved pretty good for us in discovering these cases. So other items, just some interesting meetings that I've attended. I was the guest speaker at the Menlo Park Rotary Club a few weeks back. It was a great experience. Shared a little bit about home hardening and defensible space just with fire season coming up. Also pitched a little bit with them for some interest into our CERT program, and I think there was some interest there. Attended the last ADAP presentation or meeting that was, I think, 2 Saturdays ago. Fire Chief Ari DeLay, who's the San Bruno Fire Chief, and also La Honda Volunteer Fire Brigade Volunteer Fire Chief. He lives up in there. Shared some of his experiences about the CZU complex and the challenges in their current area. Talked a little bit about home hardening. I've chatted with him a little bit about their CERT program as we're looking at revitalizing ours or revamping it. Then also attended an ambulance JPA meeting. Really was at the invitation of Director Corrali, who sits on that board meeting or that JPA meeting. Interesting for me to just get a little peek into what goes on there. Interesting conversations. A lot of it had to do with the leadership of that JPA and some changes that were going on there. Incidents of significance. We've had a couple since our last board meeting. We had a structure fire in the 1300 block of Sherman Avenue in Menlo Park. This was a $5 million house that had an interior structure fire. We estimated there was a $900,000 structure lost and $50,000 in lost content. So approximately a $4 million save on that one. The next on there, the structure fire that we had recently in the 100 block of Abelia Way in East Palo Alto actually started outside. This is our second fire there in 3 months. It started outside in some sheds, some outdoor storage, some vehicles that were out in the yard there. Had a structure loss. Well, it's between the vehicles and the outbuildings. It was only a $2,100 loss and a potential loss of $2.5 million with the properties that were around it. So good stop there. Then, oh, sorry, that was basically a grass fire that ran into a structure there. Then last Friday, we had that fire that I was just talking about in the 900 block of Garden Street in EPA. This was the second one in 3 months. That was one that burnt in the outbuildings and the vehicles with a $35,000 loss and an $850,000 save with the building, preventing it from moving into the structures. Beyond that, just a few hours ago, Redwood City had a brush fire that was managed between them and CAL FIRE. It was, I believe, in the state responsibility area in the Edgewood Park area. That's over between Farm Hill Boulevard, Edgewood Road, and the 280. It looks like it burnt to the west and was stopped at 20 acres. But just good indication that we're moving into fire season. Obviously, it was hot today. So as we talk about what we've been doing with our defensible space, what your board approved at the last meeting on our defensible space program and declaring the parcels a nuisance, all very helpful for us. A couple more items of interest. I just wanted to let you know that at the last budget hearing, we had a new position approved. No, stand by. We had a new position, a finance manager position approved. Basically, we reclassified the administrative services manager to finance manager. That has been, the job description has been revised and already posted. And it's set to close, I think, in the third week of July. So hopefully we'll have some really good, highly qualified candidates for that. And then also, just wanted to acknowledge, you guys have probably all seen it, that the city of Menlo Park appointed the interim city manager, Justin Murphy, as the permanent city manager, which is great. I've already been working with Justin on the side on a few things and had reached out to him about possibly hosting a joint meeting like we did with Atherton, and both he and the mayor, Betsy Nash, are very excited to do that. I think Virginia will touch on that a little bit during her report. So with that, that's the end of the chief's report part. I'm going to talk now about kind of giving an update on the ERAF and where we are now with that issue. Obviously, I sent out an email alerting the board back in the end of May about the potential of a significant loss of our ERAF rebate. So that happened, it started on May 18th when I had an email from Shirley Terrell, who works for the San Mateo County Controller's Office. And she had provided us with a spreadsheet that indicated that our fire district was standing to lose potentially $7.1 million in ERAF rebates, or excess ERAF as they call it, just in the next fiscal year. And that number would grow incrementally over the next 10 years, so that the loss would be well more than $7 million a year moving forward. What's interesting is initially it was explained by the San Mateo County Deputy County Attorney that this was all happening as a result of the governor's May revise and a budget trailer bill that had been introduced by the Department of Finance. California Special Districts Association got involved because this was obviously a huge impact to special districts, especially, well, really only here in San Mateo County, which we'll get to. And they reached out to the Department of Finance, and the Department of Finance reaffirmed that this would have absolutely no impact on special districts from their position. It was interesting. Then the San Mateo County Attorney changed his position and indicated that it was his belief that ERAF revenues and the law behind them, or the ERAF rebates and the law behind them, had been misinterpreted, possibly since its inception, and they had been wrongly distributing them. So we had a number of conversations with the California Special Districts Association and our local San Mateo County Special Districts. The Special Districts Association very much wanted to take, they didn't want to take the lead on this. They wanted to take a back seat and support us because their position was that there really isn't an issue. San Mateo County was independently taking a position that was contrary to every other county's position in the state of California. There had been a number of conversations going on amongst the city and county attorneys. We were fortunate enough to have Steve Miller connect us with one of his partners in his firm, Michael Conneran. Did I pronounce it right, Steve? Close enough? Which was really great for us. Michael also happens to be an assistant city attorney with the city of Millbrae. So he had been part of those conversations with this deputy county attorney, understood what was happening, and also had tremendous knowledge as it related to ERAF, the VLF, a lot of things that I didn't quite understand. But so we scheduled a meeting between us, myself, Steve, Michael, and the California Special Districts people who have really, I mean, it was really great having all of those individuals together and plotted a path. And really the course of action that we took was for Michael to draft up an email to the San Mateo County Deputy Attorney, presenting him with a different perspective of how he could look at it. We were really trying to not back him into the corner and not pick a fight, but provide an alternative way of looking at things. And so Michael did that, and I think probably successfully so. We still haven't heard yet, but the attorney responded back that thank you for the additional perspective. It's helpful. We're planning on gathering back up after July 1st and having a conversation with the county controller's office and charting a path forward. What's really interesting about the position that the San Mateo County attorney has taken is that, and the Special Districts Association confirmed this, is that the Auditor Controller's Office confirmed that the misdirection of the excess ERAF dollars from special districts would confer no fiscal benefits to the cities or the county. So it wasn't financially benefiting the county to take this new position. Ultimately, all it would do would benefit the state of California and its general fund that is responsible for, I think, making counties whole when it comes to the VLF fees. So it's a very interesting position for the county attorney to take. It doesn't financially benefit the county of San Mateo. It only harms the special districts within the county of San Mateo. And I think to the tune of about $30 million just per year, and doesn't advantage the county of San Mateo at all. So really what we're waiting on right now is for this meeting to occur in July. We'll see what direction they take. Our concern is right now that ultimately the state distributes the property tax monies to the county controller's office to then distribute it to special districts. That will happen in November. And our strong hope is that we have these things pointed in the right direction before then, so that they don't not distribute them to us and the other special districts within the county. So yeah, if they take a position that's contrary to that, then we'll start coalescing with some of the other special districts, ramping up the fight to a degree, and letting them know that there will be litigation that's involved with this moving forward, and taking a stronger position then. But again, the tact right now is to give that attorney an opportunity to pivot and hopefully see the light and go, yeah, I see this. This makes sense. Yeah, our interpretation is new and different now. So with that, open to questions. I'm not sure I'll be able to answer them, but hopefully Steve will also be able to weigh in on that. But I pulled this out and put it on the agenda as a bullet point so that we could discuss it openly if the board had questions.
Thank you, Chief. Are there questions for the chief or comments about this item or any part of the chief's report?
I have a quick question, Chuck.
Go ahead, Robert.
Chief, regarding the, going back to the COVID, the cases of the, 79 cases since December, how many are actually back on the job right now?
So everyone,
Everyone?
except for 4 employees, so whatever that is, 73 of the 77 are back at work.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, plus the 3 that we just added. So,
That's sweet.
so 7 of them are still off work. Probably a few of them are coming back to work shortly.
And where, are they firefighters or just across the board?
Across the board,
Across the
it's
board.
administrative staff. I'm one of those numbers there. I know there's some others that are a part of those numbers, but it's
Okay,
across the board.
okay. Thanks.
Excuse me. Any other questions for the chief? Well, I wanted to say about the ERAF, I applaud the direction that this is going. It seems like we made very rapid progress and something concrete, not just, we're not just moaning and complaining, but we're actually reasoning and laying the groundwork for potential litigation if that were necessary. So I think that was the right way to go. And I do just curious though, the person that's championing this new direction for the county, is this a new person in the county or is this somebody who's been around for a while?
Steve, I don't know if you know him or know of him.
Yeah, I mean, championing maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but this is the deputy county counsel whose job description is he supports the auditor's office, and he's not new. He's been there for, more than 5, less than 10 years.
I see. I just wondered why there was a change all of a sudden. I mean, one day you wake up and you read the law differently or something that it just doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah, so my take is that the confusion on top of an already complex scheme was the budget trailer bill, which confused and slightly conflated the process for funding ERAF with the process for reimbursing cities and counties for the reduction in the vehicle license fee. And those are 2 independent procedures that got sort of interlaced.
I see. Okay,
Do
thank
we
you.
know who the person is? I didn't see it in the report, sorry.
Can you say it louder, Virginia? I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
Do-
now.
Do we, who is the person? Which assistant county counsel?
His last name is McCloskey.
Okay,
Yeah, and what's interesting, if I could add one more interesting thing, I think that budget trailer bill language was, there was a pretty serious letter writing campaign from cities and counties opposing it, and I think members actually ended up killing it. So, but the problem still remains, even that with that budget trailer bill supposedly dead, the interpretation by the deputy county counsel still remains that his belief was there was a problem in how the old law had been interpreted. So we're kind of hopeful that they'll just let the whole thing go now that the cities and counties aren't even going to be harmed, but we'll see.
Okay, any more questions or comments on the chief's report? Thank you, Chief. Okay, we'll move now to our public hearing on the budget. And I will open the public hearing at this point. And Michelle, would you ask if there was anybody like to speak to our budget?
Yes, if anybody would like to have a public comment on the budget, please raise your hand or press *9 on the phone if you called in. And last call for public comment. And seeing none, Director Bernstein, you may continue.
Okay, well, I will then close the public hearing and bring this back into the hands of the board with item number 3, where our mission is to adopt by resolution the budget and the full-time equivalent staffing levels.
So
that's
moved.
Item number 3.
So moved, Chuck.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget. Did I jump over? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, that's right. I'm sorry. Let me take comments on the budget or any items that anybody would like to bring. Somebody has something in the background. I wonder if whoever it is could maybe it's at the airport. Thank you, Virginia.
No, it wasn't at the airport, but I do have my hand raised.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank staff for putting this together and kind of steering us in the process that we are now taking, in terms of the whole budget approval process. So thank you, Long, for your hard work on this, and to the chief as well. Could y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
They're still, it's diminished now, but there was still some background noise, but it seems to be gone right now. So all that's good. So we have a motion. Any comments on the budget?
Chuck,
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
I just had a couple quick questions on the attachment B under where the grant funded FTE category. You see the division chief.
What page are you on, please, Jim?
I am on, it's attachment B.
Page 10. 10.
Oh, I see. Okay, attachment V. Got it.
So it shows the division chief as a 10% position. I wonder if that's a typo or if that's accurate.
Sure, I'm happy to take that. So it's accurate. What it is, if you'll see above on the third line down, you'll see a division chief up there. There's 2.9.
I
So
see.
that's an allocation of 10% of that division chief's position on the FEMA side.
Okay, thank
So
you. And
that's-
on the next page, attachment C, program 3070, fire suppression, it shows 5.8 million in overtime in the preliminary budget column. Is any of that reimbursable to us by FEMA
Yes.
or OES?
Some of it is. I don't know what the percentage in there before, but that, it's interesting as I was going through here and making some reduction in overtime. That's really the account that we have very little control over. So that does include all of our reimbursements for deployments. And that would be deployments if we have a FEMA deployment with our task force, or if we send resources out to federal or state wildland fires. That overtime is budgeted for in that account also.
So, but
It's kind of a clearinghouse, but next year we'll have a much better idea.
some portion of that will come back to us. Some percent.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to stay on attachment C for a second, since we're open to it, which is page 11 of our packet. I'm still very concerned about this, the overtime here. When I look at all these things that relate to buying stuff, that is our acquisition, our purchasing, hose, PPE, rope, saws, self-contained breathing apparatus, tools, and so forth, that this has to be done on overtime just seems wrong to me. And I looked down there further on down, about 2/3 of the way down, where things like our cadets and our Explorer program, I mean, these should be in the hands of people who are working a regular schedule, not people who are working shift work and have to do this on their days off. And I've been informed that, you know, for the chief in doing this had indicated that it's really hard. Our accounting system isn't as complete as it perhaps should be in terms of identifying why this is happening and so forth. And I think that's something that the chief will be moving toward, which I applaud. But there's just so much here that shouldn't be done on overtime. I mean, I go down the, you know, regional training center and public education and even fire prevention. If those are the hours people need to work, that's the hours they should have their job for. It just shouldn't have to be done on overtime. If somebody's out or we're missing people, that's one thing. But this seems to me routine, and we've gone, and you know, we have reduced it $250,000, but still we were down a couple of years ago at $2 or $3 million, and we've gone up $4 or $5 million on overtime. And I just have a lot of problem doing that. I'm not one of those people that's against overtime. I mean, overtime might be a good financial decision at some point, but doing it for things that aren't critical. Again, doing it for, when I look at wellness, for example, why do we have to do wellness on overtime? I mean, it's just something that just seems wrong to me. And I am hoping that we can clean up some of this in the next 6 months. And I'm one of those people that would like to see this budget come back to us for a review after 6 months, or some other things we were looking at in 6 months. And I'd like to see some of these things come back in 6 months when we have time to do kind of a decent review of this. So, personal opinion. Are there other comments anybody wants to make?
I have a comment, Chuck, just an inquiry. It's on attachment B. I was trying, and Chief, maybe you could help me out here. I was trying to understand, I looked at attachment C and I saw that there was overtime not even included in areas, 2 areas, emergency management and community preparedness. And then my caught my eye is on attachments B, and I was trying to figure out which one of these positions actually focus in on those 2 particular areas. I saw there was a disaster response manager. I saw that there was a emergency service specialist. And so those are the only potential areas that I focus on that could possibly run, the emergency management as well as community preparedness program. Has that program been, those programs been isolated or canceled?
No. So, I mean, those are good questions. And I know, and I'm going to ask Francine for some help here if she's available, because I know the disaster response manager is Ryan's position. And then which one Andres is in, I don't remember specifically.
I can chime in on that.
Okay, Lon.
So
Please do.
Andre's position is the emergency services specialist, and Andres is non-exempt. So he technically can incur overtime, but there was no budget for overtime in this fiscal year for that program.
Okay.
And Long, which position is currently the unfilled position that is in there?
The current unfilled position is the senior management analyst.
Okay.
The senior management analyst, you see there's two
Yeah.
positions. One is John Hitchcock and the other one is vacant currently.
Okay, great. Thank you, Long. So Director Jones, so back to your question, it's still fully staffed. We actually have that senior management analyst position being held. It's been budgeted, it's funded. We don't have it filled because we're waiting to kind of retool the program.
All right.
The program managers have not historically budgeted for overtime. It's one of those things where I think Andres flexes his time and teaches cert classes on the weekends. If that changes, especially with us making some changes to the program, I do have some discretionary monies. You'll see at the very top under 1010 district administration
Mhm.
that we can reallocate to there. So
Okay,
what's nice is that we have some administrative cushion to prioritize programs also.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers your question, Director.
it did. It
Okay.
did. Thank you.
Other comments about the budget from any directors? Well, I have another one, and I'll make this my last. I'm reiterating myself from a month ago, but I think the board is the majority of the board, I think, wants to give a little bit more time to look at some of these things that I don't think are working very well. And I'm referring specifically to the Office of Emergency Management in terms of, I'm just feeling in the years that I've been here, I got on the board to actually improve our disaster preparedness. And we had a much more active CERT group and activities 5 years ago, and we have declined since those 5 years. And I just think that we are working on borrowed time right now. One of these days, something is going to happen and we need those volunteers, and we just don't have the infrastructure to support that. And I just don't feel like we're ever going to have that if we keep going on the course we're going on. So I'm very impatient with this. I'm also very troubled by at the professional level, where the board, I think at one point 3 years ago, signaled an interest in having an alerting system, the LRAD system deployed so that we could deal with wildfires, or we could deal with some sort of, chemical threat on the freeway, or who knows what. And we were brought a proposal for a single unit, which doesn't make a system, and there was no protocol whatsoever for who would operate it, for what the warnings would be, for what kind of training we would do, nothing. And my understanding was we were going to have something discussed and brought to us, and 3 years have gone by and nothing's happened there either. And I just don't want to wait anymore. I think we need something there, and I think we just need change. And I was tempted, I've been thinking about what I'm going to do about the budget, because I feel uncomfortable voting for an annual budget here where it just doesn't reflect the priorities that I as an individual have. And we need a budget to operate, and to vote against a whole budget seems silly in one hand, but to vote for a budget that doesn't reflect what we should be doing seems like a betrayal of the needs of the district. So I've been conflicted about this. I was encouraged by the chief's announcement that we have posted the finance position, and that we are going to start looking at some of this stuff. And so I will reluctantly vote for the budget, but I'm going to want us to take another look at it come December and see if we can tighten up some things. By that time, the chief will have been here long enough to be making decisions about both different operations as well as people. And I think we'll be much more informed. So I'm voting on this with the idea that I would very much, and I hope the finance committee will take it up again in December, but look at revising the budget to meet the needs of the district at the time. So I'm sorry for going on so long, but that'll be my last comment about the budget. Robert, I see your hand up, and please go ahead.
You know, I don't know if I think I reserve my comment because it's more, I've been reading some historical documents about the district regarding, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, approximately, well, I know about the LRAD system. We got to East Palo Alto and that system got canned. And there was some adamant, and it got canned over the fact that one of the board members brought up the notion that there wasn't a manual and as a result wouldn't move forward installing the LRAD system in East Palo Alto Station 2. As you know, that I know an LRAD system is up in Atherton over there near the reservoir. And we just never did move beyond that to look into Menlo, other areas in Menlo Park. I hope that, at the end of the year, if that's when it's going to be brought up again, that, the chief is here and the chief needs to kind of figure out whether the system if the system is broke, that it really needs to be fixed and go about trying to fix it. Because you take a person from one area and thrust them into an area that was vacant, and you expect change to take place overnight. And so, I hope that the board kind of keep an open mind as well as regarding certain positions, because clearly positions go right now. They talk about community preparedness and working with the community. And that's why we're trying to understand if those positions still there, that it may be able to try to address some of those issues that have been brought up. So that's it for me. I'm done.
Okay. Any other comments about the budget? Let me ask Michelle. Michelle, is Virginia still here? I don't see her on this anymore.
She's on the list. She's still
I'm
here.
here.
Oh, thank you, Virginia. I'm sorry. I just didn't see. Oh, I see you way down there. Sorry. Okay, so we're still all five of us here. Good.
Right. I
we have-
seconded the motion, Chuck.
Yes, we have, I was going to say, we have a motion and a second. If there's no, is there any more last comment on the budget?
Let me just ask if anyone has a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you called in. And I see none. Director Bernstein, you may continue.
Okay, so let's proceed with a roll call vote, please, Michelle.
Director Jones? Director Jones, you're muted.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
And Director Bernstein?
Reluctantly, aye. The motion carries 5-0. And the budget is, and the FTE staffing are approved. Okay, we're going now to the consent items. There are, sorry, going back to my place here, there are 6 items on it: minutes, treasurer's report, continued remote meetings, appropriation limit, election to relating to the election of directors, and the master pay schedule. So could I have
I'll
a
move
motion?
to
Virginia, you've moved to accept the
approve the consent calendar, yes.
okay.
I'll second.
Rob has seconded it. And would anybody like to pull any of these items? for discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's proceed to a roll call on the consent calendar. Michelle, please.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bernstein.
Aye. So the consent calendar, items 4 through 9 are approved 5-0. And we'll move to the regular agenda. Item number 10, which is a resolution, well, a proposed resolution to authorize payment of 4.8 million to CalPERS. Chief, are you going to discuss that or is that long?
Sure, I'll tee it up and see what kind of questions there are, but this is a pretty long-standing practice of the district and good stewardship of our monies is to when we end up, this is actually when in our budgeting practices, we budget our PERS liability at a higher amount than our actual, and we use it kind of as a forced savings plan to buy down our PERS liability. So every year we come back to the board with a recommendation to send this money off to PERS to pay down our UAL. And that's what the recommendation is for today is that amount, and I'm missing it, but the 4.8 or so million dollars. So with that, I'll open it up for questions and also hand it over to Long if Long has anything else he'd like to add.
I think the chief summed it up fine.
Chuck?
Yes.
Chuck? Also, I mean, I'm happy to make a motion to adopt a resolution to authorize a payment of $4,758,529 toward the district's CalPERS Safety Classic unfunded accrued liability.
Okay, may I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Jim seconded the motion, so we have a motion and second. Is there discussion on this item? Jim, go
Chuck?
ahead, please. Yes.
I don't know if this is for Chief or Lamb, but does this have an endpoint? Will our buy down, will that start to diminish as classic employees begin to retire? Do you have any projections on that?
So as far as projection goes, we have an unfunded accrual liability, and that numbers will grow over time depending on how the CalPERS investment are doing. So if they incur a loss, then our unfunded accrual liabilities will go up as we incur the loss. But as we as personnel retire and we replace it with PEPRA employees, that unfunded liabilities for the Safety Classic will eventually go down over time. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But just to be clear, it won't go down until the last safety person is no longer living and no relative is living. Is that right? Or no, what do you call it? Beneficiary.
No, once they separate from us, they belong to PERS.
Yeah,
Is that
but
right?
I think PERS can still come back to us when their costs are higher. That, in other words, we still get billed for the liability, and if they live longer than PERS estimated, I'm not talking about one person, I'm talking about collectively, that the unfunded liability will grow, and everybody has guessed that it will grow because one, we know we have too high of a discount rate. And that PERS is expecting too high a return on their investment. And secondly, mortality was declining. And third, some expenses were increasing also. So that, and that would affect survivors also.
Chuck, just one more thing. It's somewhat related to this. We've discussed in the past the excess pension payments for those employees that exceed the the IRS established amount. And we had talked about, setting up some accounting for that separately. I think, my question would be, has the finance committee considered that issue, and if they have, what, is there an outcome?
So if I understand you correctly, I think you're referring to the excess where the chief officer hit the cap, and on a yearly basis, CalPERS would bill us or invoice us for the difference. So in this fiscal year, we actually budgeted that portion of the excess into our regular budgeting process. So it is incorporated into the fiscal year 23's budget for what you're talking about, Director Michael.
Jim, are you talking about the excess vis-a-vis the Internal Revenue Code, the issue that came up about a year or so ago?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So I thought that I think we've had that discussion. So that's why I think Long is
It is budgeted in
incorporated
fiscal year
into
23.
the budget.
Director
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, thank you.
but I think Jim's question was, have we addressed taking steps to deal with it? And for the people who have already retired, I think we're just going to get annual bills. I mean, if we wanted to take steps on it, we would have to do something like reduce compensation or something in the future to not make it, not continue it into the future. But that cap is going to increase at some rate of inflation every year, so that gets a little bit better. But my guess is that that amount that we have to pay every year will grow considerably over the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. Now, maybe as the chief officers start to become Pepper employees, we won't see that anymore. I don't know. But I don't think we've solved the problem.
Right, Director, it should start decreasing over time. My understanding is that IRS rule only applies to employees, I believe, hired before 1996, and those that were hired after are subject to the cap. And then once you hit PEPRA, it doesn't apply at all because the PEPRA cap is well below the IRS cap.
Thank you.
And let me, Chief, just to, and at this point, you would say there's really nothing we should be looking at to mitigate that in any way, right? That we
Yeah,
just have to
My
let it
feeling
play out.
is it's going to resolve itself, and with Long appropriately budgeting for it, the problem is eventually not going to be a problem anymore.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other comments or questions about item number 10 here and the motion on the floor? Let me go to the public and comment and see, does anybody in the public want to comment on this item number 10?
And if so, you can raise the hand or you can press *9 if you called in. Item number 10. And Director Bernstein, I don't see any.
Okay, could you proceed the roll call vote, please?
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bernstein.
Aye. The resolution is approved 5-0. Move to item number 11, which is to approve the district's investment policy and the approval of the treasurer. This is something that we have to do annually, and the treasurer at this point is acting treasurer is Long Lamb. And Chief, are you going to take this, or is Long?
I'm gonna try until I run out of answers. So that's what basically we're asking for. Two things is just because we had talked about this previously, is for us to appoint Long Lamb as the treasurer for the district, as the interim administrative services manager. That will change at some point in time in the future when we hire a new finance manager, but for the time being, we need an appointed treasurer. That needs to be done annually. And then as a best practice, we're asking for you to accept a report of our finance policy as it's written. It has not changed. And so it's the same policy as you have previously approved with no changes added to it. So that is in essence what the report is. Long. If we need to add anything else, please chime in. Otherwise, we're open for questions.
Nothing to add.
Okay, could I ask for a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion, Chuck.
Okay.
I'll
Rob,
I'll second that.
and motion made by Rob, seconded by Virginia. I had one comment from the Finance Committee, and Virginia, you may want to expand upon what I'm saying, but this goes back to a question Robert raised some time ago, maybe 6 months ago, that we have not lost track of, Robert. I just wanted to be sure that you're aware that it's still being worked on. This document gives a very broad framework for the things the district can invest in, which is many, many things. You raised the question of how does the district decide specifically what to buy and when and how much of and so forth, which are really good questions. And that keeps coming up at every time this is discussed. And I think we will get to that, but basically the district has put all of its money, all of its investment. Now, I'm misspeaking. Some of the money is in regular bank accounts earning no interest. And some of it is in LAIF accounts, which is the state-sponsored local agency investment fund, where we're earning maybe 1/4% or something. So we're earning more than we were, but we've got this, $60 million sitting there earning essentially no money. And it's something I know the chief has an interest in. And we are trying to schedule at some point a board meeting with a financial expert or a financial advisor who could educate all of us on perhaps more, particularly with inflation getting up to 5%, maybe higher than that, as high as 7%. We're losing money on our savings at this point. And so we are mindful of trying to bring to the board some expertise about how to manage our money better than we're doing. So I want you to know that. Virginia, did you have anything to add to what I just said?
No, but Robert, thanks for bringing up the issue. I mean, I think, I don't know, I mean, the financial markets at the time of the finance committee was in a very different place than it is today. So it'll be good to have, some professional advisor to at least talk to.
Yeah. I have a question, Chuck.
Please go ahead.
And please forgive me my wrong. You probably may be able to help as well as anybody. I was looking on page 50 of the report, the investment policy, and where it talked about return on investment, and it didn't really. I guess the statement was the district investment portfolio shall have the objective of attaining a comparative performance measure or an acceptable rate of return throughout the budgetary and economic cycle. So what I get that, but what I don't understand is that have the board, and this could be a policy issue that the board has to come up with, have the board, what is the acceptable rate of return? Do we have, what is our tolerance level? And if there is a consultant that come on board, hopefully we can kind of, nothing is ideal depending on the market, where things are, but I think we should have certain kind of boundaries set for ourselves, as well as whoever we encounter that we're looking for a certain return on our investment. what that may, those boundaries are, so that, like in any investment, you have to take into consideration, there may be some risks involved. Everything has some risk, but what is our tolerance level at that point in time? So I don't know, maybe we have that already. Long, do you know if we have anything like that in printed somewhere? Because I haven't seen a policy regarding that. It seems like this is the only investment policy we got, but it doesn't, nowhere in the document I'm looking at, I saw that there may be setting boundaries for ourselves. I know there's some numerical dollar amounts that was mentioned, but.
So as far as I know, Director Jones, we do not have anything that what you mentioned. Just to give you the director's background, the district hasn't diversified our portfolios about in 2 decades. So this is the first time we're actually looking into diversifying our investment portfolio. So to answer your questions, we do not currently have a benchmark right now, but we're working on it.
So would that be a situation where this new person or someone Chuck mentioned that may come in and kind of help us get to that point? Or is it something that you yourself and other staff members can kind of say, hey, this is some areas where these are the benchmarks that we may come up with, we're thinking about?
So this is actually our the district's authorization to have what we want, or what is our benchmark. So if we are to go out and inquire with investment analysts, they would provide us with their expertise and provide comments and show us how we can determine our benchmark and perform the cash flow analysis to see how much we can invest without jeopardizing our operations. So it could be worked up. I mean, we can work with the investment advisors to generate a benchmark for the district to follow and incorporate into the policies. But it is a work in progress, and we're going to work towards that.
Two other questions. On page 54, where it talked about ineligible investments, and it says the investments not described herein, including but not limited to common stocks, financial futures, contracts, and options are prohibited in this fund. So again, the assumption is that we will steer clear, based on this policy, steer clear from those type of investments as a district. And the last one has to do with on page it's page 55. It talked about reporting, and actually it's on page 56 where it mentioned that the district treasurer, which I assume will be you, Long, shall establish written investment policy procedures for the operation of the investment program consistent with this policy. So my assumption is, and there's another section that talked about, I guess the treasurer will provide monthly reports to the board regarding how each investment is performing. Did I read that accurately?
Yes. So if we're to diversify our investment portfolio, the requirements is to provide the finance committee committee and the board a monthly investment report. Currently, we do not have our funds are in the LAIF, and it's just an agency pool. So all the funds are pooled together, and the LAIF can invest based on their policies.
Mhm.
I get it. Okay, thanks.
Director, if I could just share a few thoughts, which, I will say Long came and knocked on my door a few months ago, just about moving some of our monies around because we had so much sitting in non-interest bearing cash accounts. So the transfer of our monies to Leif have been great. So now we're, I think, earning 0.7%. Our next steps are to come to the Finance Committee with some recommendations. We have kind of in the short term, a menu of incredibly safe options that we already have access to. There are treasury bills, that we can chart over time. And Long as I actually reached out to an investment consultant that maybe can make a presentation to the Finance Committee. The first things we'll need to do is set up a trust account so that we can actually move our monies into that. And then we will be providing the Finance Committee and perhaps the board looking, with some options, looking for recommendations. And all of these are incredibly conservative, safe investments to preserve our capital and hopefully to prevent a little deterioration against inflation too. So we're looking forward to presenting, like I had just mentioned, a variety of these options to the Finance Committee and the board, and hopefully in the near future.
I think Jim, last year, year before, indicated that there was a need to kind of understand where our investments, in light of what we just went through, I guess, early this year in terms of cash we had to pull out of pocket on an investment that kind of caught us by surprise. So I think this is the first step in terms of, from my perspective, where I see first step in making pulling those safeguards into play so that things like what we went through won't sneak up on us in the future. So thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for this resolution. Any more comments from the board members? I'll take it then for public comment. Any comment from the public on this item?
If anyone has a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you called in. And I see none, Director Bernstein.
Okay, then please proceed with the roll call vote.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bernstein.
Aye. Okay, approved, the resolution was approved 5-0. We'll move to item number 12, which is to accept revisions to the Board of Directors Policies and Procedures Manual. We have, I think there are 3 things on the table right now. There may be more. Who was, Michelle, are you discussing this or is somebody else doing that?
Well, I can go over it. So the first item is regarding the committee and liaison assignments. And this was a recommendation by you, Director Bernstein, and staff. And the recommendation is that it's only accurate for half the year. So Director Bernstein and staff thinks that it should be removed from the manual, not only for that reason, but also it's not a policy or a procedure. So it's not really necessary. And also we do notify the jurisdictions of the assignments each year when they're approved in January. And we also have it posted to our website. So the recommendation on that one is to remove it completely from the manual.
So this would be Appendix C.
Correct.
And it's attachment B.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
It's a little confusing with that, right?
A little bit.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe we should just go ahead and discuss all of them. Each one, any comments on taking out these annual things? They'd still be posted on our website. They're still accessible to people. We wouldn't be giving people bad information for half a year. Go ahead, Virginia.
Yeah, I think that it's not a bad idea, but at the same time, I know that sometimes when there's been confusion, um, this was a very quick reference place to look for, who's doing what. But that assumes that sometimes it's, that it's updated, and mostly it has been, but there have been times when it hasn't been. So, I mean, so long as it's easily viewed by like us or staff or even, well, and especially the public, that I don't have any problems doing, removing this. Michelle, I just wanted to make sure that it's easily accessible and visible to people who want to find out who's doing what.
Well, if I'm correct, I believe, Michelle, please correct me, that on the website, it's under the board tab. There are the assignments on the board tab. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it's in the same place as where the manual is too.
Right. It's just sometimes the website is a little difficult difficult to find things.
Well, if it's hard to find, I agree with you that it's hard to find things sometimes, but if they can't find that, then they can't find the procedures manual either. So,
That's true. Anyway, I mean, I don't mind, eliminating it. I just want to make sure that people know that it's easily viewable and accessible.
okay, does anybody else have any comments on this change? Okay, let me move to the second one then. The resident representatives, it's on page 139 of our packet. Michelle, you want to describe that one?
So in our manual, it says that resident representatives can serve on ad hoc committees. However, an ad hoc committee must be composed solely of less than a quorum of the legislative body to not be considered a legislative body for purposes of the Brown Act and to comply with section 7.6 of the manual. And for those reasons, resident representatives are not permitted to serve on ad hoc committees. So we should correct that in the manual to reflect that.
Let me just take a little issue with that, though, Michelle. I mean, we can make a decision that we don't want resident representatives, but the way it was done was they were considered not official members of the committee. They were on the committee. They were not voting members. They would.
Wait, Director Bernstein, though, we're talking about ad hoc committees. You're referring to
Oh,
standing committees. So the
I'm-
standing committees, we wouldn't make any changes to that. It's just for the ad hoc.
I see. I apologize. So have we had ad hoc committee representatives in recent? times?
Never.
Okay, my fault. I apologize. I was, yeah, the minute I saw that word, I was thinking of our standing committees. Okay, any discussion of this change? Okay.
We can just accept, right?
Yeah, well, let's
Just accept the revision. Yeah, we don't have to make a motion, right?
Not yet. Let's do it when we're all done here. And then we've got one more change. Michelle, would you describe that one on page 141 of the procedures manual?
Yeah, so that one's for the Emergency Preparedness Committee description, and this came in from Director Jones. The Emergency Preparedness Committee talked about the goal and role of the committee, and that the language that currently describes the Emergency Preparedness Committee doesn't really fit. And so Chief Lorenzen actually came up with, shall ensure that the communities within our jurisdiction are more prepared tomorrow than they are today. And Director Jones and Director Crawley seem to like that a lot. And so after that meeting, Director Jones asked me to include this in the report for your consideration.
Any comment? My observation, it's sort of, I would say, a slightly different tone than the rest of ours. It's kind of a dry, most of this procedures manual is pretty dry in tone. This is kind of a cute or maybe perhaps even a little bit glib thing, but it's still true in a way. I mean, that's one of the things that we want. It's just, yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of struck by the tone of it, but I think that it's accurate. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much to what the essence of what, trying to move the E-Prep committee in a direction that it seemed like, popular demand is kind of asking us to want us to do. I would like to make a friendly, it's really up to the chief, make a friendly extension or a couple of words added to it. And that is where it's read right now, shall ensure that the communities within our jurisdictions are more prepared tomorrow than they are today. The change I would like, the friendly amendment would be shall oversee and provide policy direction to ensure that the communities within our district are more prepared tomorrow than they are today.
Can you repeat the wording? Shall provide oversight and direction?
Shall oversee and
Oh.
provide policy direction to ensure that the communities within our district are more prepared tomorrow than they are today.
Do you have the wording, Michelle?
I do.
I'm just asking, and it's really subject to the chief, because I like what he came up with, because it kind of pointed us in a direction. But I think we also, from the board perspective, committees focusing on policies and policies and procedures, mainly policies. So I just wanted to throw that in there so that we don't lose sight of what the committee function really is, is a policy.
That's very, very kind of you, Director, to ask. So I think your rephrased statement perfectly aligns with what your board policy is intended to do. And I mean, as we were talking about on that day, we were trying to figure out what the purpose was based on the words in there. And that was just kind of one of those off the cuff kind of thoughts. And so, yeah, I don't have any particular ownership of it, but I think your new wording is great.
And let me just provide more support. If you look at the three below it, finance, human resources, and strategic planning, their wording parallels this exactly. So it seems in keeping with the tone of everything else. Any other comments on this item? Well, it seems like we have consensus on these three changes. Can we get, let's see, we're being asked to, is this?
Accept it. We're just accepting it. So I don't know if we need a motion to just accept it.
I think we should have a motion since it's our policies
Right.
and procedures. Let's,
Okay, well, I'll move.
okay, so
I'll
Virginia,
move to accept the revisions to the board policies and procedures manual.
okay, and let's just be.
With the update to the
Accepts it.
emergency.
Accepts
that-
the revised.
Yes, with the,
The.
yeah, with the
revised-
updated edits for the emergency preparedness committees. I
Okay,
mean, for the purpose.
Okay,
Second.
and Robert has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Any comments from the public on this item?
If anyone has a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you called in. Seeing none, would you like me to take a roll call vote?
Please proceed.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bernstein.
Aye. Okay, it's approved 5-0. And we'll move to number 13, which is a discussion of fire safety and high-density housing. Is that you, Chief?
That is going to be a combination of myself and our Fire Marshal, John Johnston, mostly him. But I'll tee it up for him. And I don't remember who specifically asked to have it added to the agenda, but I'm sure it will be an interesting topic of discussion for our board. So part of the reason for bringing this up now is there's been a couple of projects in our jurisdiction that have had some sensitivities. You know, one of them is the flood school site. Another has to do with Menlo Park's housing element. And as they are going through it, it's always referencing fire safety. And I know there's always some concerns about what is the fire district doing? Are we reducing our requirements, you know, to allow these developments in? And I will just say, we try and stay pretty apolitical on this. We recognize there's a lot of sensitivities in the communities and with the city councils that are trying to comply with the new requirements from the state. So generally what we're doing is working with the developers or the cities to try and ensure compliance with all of our codes and standards without reducing the safety elements that we have as a fire district. And really with that, I want to turn it over to John Johnston. I know he has his fingers in this from the beginning in these things. And so anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, John, wherever you are, and let you kind of share your thoughts on that and then open it up for questions to the directors.
Great. Good evening. I do believe that a lot of this did start from the Menlo Park housing element, and I believe there are some comments that were in there in regards to seeing possibly some reduced fire measures or something like that. So I think there was concerns into if that would mean reduced safety for any of the residents or the community and the services that we provide. And so really what I want to get into is when it comes to the city of Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, and the town of Atherton, we've worked well with all of them. We part of all of their general plans and have been able to make sure that in their general plans that our primary response routes are recognized, that's adopted by the fire board. They understand our response time standards. And for each project that comes into the district, we do typically respond to any environmental impact reports and respond in regards to the safety elements where it's applicable. The one thing that I want to say is that obviously when it comes to our ordinance, each of our entities have ratified our ordinances, and so that is enforceable, and we do have the minimum California fire codes, and those are minimums, so we cannot go less than. But I believe that what the city of Menlo Park, I already reached out to them when I saw that comment in their housing element. I believe what they're looking for is what the state is trying to push is for high density housing due to the shortage in the state of California, is that they're trying to see if there's a way to get like priority plan review for these projects, a possible reduction of fees, and maybe even a reduction of more restrictive ordinances that would cause an increase to these projects. So what they're trying to do is make these projects affordable and get them done quickly to ease that California housing shortage. So where we will be at is this is a code adoption year, and the Fire Prevention Bureau right now is doing a fee study so that we can update our fees. And so along with the fire code adoption with our ordinances this year, we will also have fees in front of you. So I will be reaching out to the city of Menlo Park, seeing exactly what their intention is and seeing how we can partner to meet this. And then I will be coming before the board with some options if needed to be able to try to meet some of those requests. So with that, I'll open up if there's any questions or concerns you may have.
I have a question, Chuck.
Go ahead, Robert, please.
Chief, does this only applies to affordable housing? Am I correct? Or when you say high density housing versus affordable housing, there's two different. I mean, both high density can be for affordable housing, but high density also can be market rate. What is this gearing, this type of policy gearing itself towards for the city?
Sure. So obviously all of the laws we have apply to every project. And any housing project by state law, and then whatever the local jurisdictions have, they have a percentage that's required to meet certain affordable aspects. So the entire project will be affected by it, no matter what, when it becomes multifamily. So every project will be affected due to that. And one of the things with it is all of these projects will be California state mandated inspections for the district on an annual basis as the result of their occupancy.
Thank you.
I have a question, John. And, you know, I maybe this is political, but it just seems to me that all these things we do to put more houses on the same amount of property reduces safety. I don't know how we can conclude otherwise. I mean, that may be an acceptable trade-off for the public, but I mean, I drive down Woodland almost every day, and I see somebody has put a second unit on their property that's like 3 feet away from the first unit or whatever. And it seems to me if that second unit has a fire, the first unit will have a fire. Whereas before there was only one unit there and there would have only been one fire. I mean, I don't understand how we can say we're maintaining safety when in fact, it just seems obvious that we're not maintaining safety.
You're right, that is a political issue. And so all we do is we make sure that we enforce the code to provide as safe a environment as possible.
But do the codes speak anything in terms of distance one to the other? I mean, some of these second units are attached, some of them are not attached. I mean, are the codes are the codes dealing now with
Yes,
proximity and so forth?
they do. And the code also deals with openings and sprinklers based upon that. So that is items that we look at. Luckily, we have an ordinance here that requires sprinklers in all new homes. However, the state law has overwritten that in some cases for the ADUs. But we still have access and water requirements, which is always the first thing. And so if any of these projects, even with the state law for these ADUs, if they cannot meet access or water requirements, then we can require sprinklers. So we are definitely looking closely at all of these and making sure that they're as safe as possible.
Okay, Rob, you had your hand up out, then Virginia. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank
You're
you,
up.
Chuck. Yeah, I have a few questions that some of the residents in my neighborhood have posed since one of the alleged projects, number 38, is affecting the neighborhood in which I live in. And of course, being a resident in this neighborhood, I'm getting a lot of questions. And I wanted to ask the questions to John, our fire marshal, that the parcel over there near Flood Park or Ravenswood Old School is a 2.2 acre parcel. What is the amount of residences that they can put on there, John, per acre? Is there a restriction or a requirement?
Oh, all the restrictions is based on height and area, and every city has its own what they call floor area ratio that they deal with. So City of Menlo Park dictates what that FAR is based upon the zoning. So the fire code or the building code does not dictate that. It's up to the owner to build within the constraints of the local jurisdiction. And then we would then apply the building and fire code with that and designate an occupancy number. So based upon the square footage that they build in and that occupancy, then we give them a maximum number of people that they can have in each unit.
Well, then what would be the Menlo Park requirement for that parcel then?
Don't know. We'd have to ask the planning department.
Okay. As to there's only one way in and out of that particular parcel. Is there any type of restriction relative to building there and only having one in and out access to that particular parcel?
Possibly, it would depend on what they decide to build. So if they built something that had enough units, was large enough that would require a second means of access or egress, then I would require it, but I don't know what they're looking to build, so it's too early to say.
Okay. What about speed bumps?
Well, speed bumps could be allowed. We actually have a design that City of Menlo Park works with that has the proper cutouts to meet our engine specifications if needed.
Could I ask a question while we're on the speed bump, just to not lose that? I noticed, because we have one of those on Woodland near where I live. Am I correct that for the fire district, the fire truck to negotiate that has to go into the other lane of traffic for the wheels to not? In other words, the cutout, there seems to be half the cutout on one side of the road and half the cutouts on the other side of the road. It seems like the engine or truck would have to go into the opposite lane of traffic. Is that incorrect?
You are correct. It actually is centered so that the engines would be centered in the speed bump. And the reason they do that is to prevent normal traffic from utilizing it in their lane. And it also allows vehicles to be able to pull over to the shoulder. Like on that road, there is really no side to pull over to, so they could pull over and we can center in the road and get by vehicles.
I see. Okay. It just seemed to me very unsafe that in the event that somebody was trying to evacuate or get away, you'd have two-way traffic maybe, and here's a fire engine going down the center of the road. So it seemed like maybe there'd be a better design than that, but does anybody work on that? Where do we get those designs?
We did the design by taking measurements of our equipment and making a design and giving it our local jurisdictions for when they decide to put them in.
Okay. I apologize, Rob. I just didn't want to lose the speed bump issue. Please.
No, no problem, Chuck. Enter any time you want. Now, John, reading the draft that the City of Menlo Park came up with under that program H4 period R, it says work with the fire district. Have they met with you with this proposal that they have here with your draft?
So is that in regards to the housing element?
It's the email
Or-
that I sent you that it's their 700-page high-density housing strategy
Yeah.
proposal draft.
So
Have they
that is,
met with you yet on this?
no, but I did reach out to them, but that was where my comment is. I believe what they're going to be looking for is expedited or priority plan review, probably a reduction of fees and possibly a reduction of any more restrictive ordinances for these. But I do need to speak with them to see exactly what their intention is. And then once I'm able to get some direction, then I'll be able to bring that to the board to see what you want to do to possibly collaborate with the City of Menlo Park.
Okay, well, John, the thing that concerns me is that they drafted this policy. They mentioned the fire district as if we have participated in this process, and we have not as to this point. But they did draw up this draft with the expectations that we're going to follow relative to their objectives. Have you read the responsibility and the financing objectives and the time frame and all that, correct?
I have read the report and I did respond to the report on the district's behalf.
Can we have a copy of that, John?
Yeah, I've sent that to the fire chief and I will send it again.
Okay, if you could send it to the entire board, that'd be great. Thank you. That's all I have, Chuck. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Virginia has her hand raised. Go ahead, Virginia.
Yeah, Mark, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that a lot of some of the issues with density and new development are obviously issues even within our neighboring areas like Woodside and Portola Valley. Are you working and well, are you kind of getting some idea about what is happening there, or John, what we can do to even collaborate? I mean, I'm just thinking of Weekend Acres in particular, and where I've received some complaints from residents there about just these like mansions on these small lots, right? And so I just want to make sure that we're in a collaborative mode in this rural part of the district. And I don't know what we can do. I mean, except just hear about what they're doing, because I know that the residents over there are very, very concerned about that. There's the fire hazard, so with density. And I also heard, and I don't know if this is true at all, I know Elizabeth Lewis from Atherton is on this call, but I have heard that in West Atherton and between Alameda de las Pulgas and El Camino, I think probably closer to Alameda near Berry Lane, that there was a property there that's been scraped and that there might be 62 units of housing. Someone mentioned it. I don't know if that's true or not, but what are we doing what are we doing right now it's kind of Rob brought this up, when there's new housing that's being approved to meet the RENA numbers, and with SB 9, I mean, it just seems like this could be a boon for the developers. The more, the better. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so it's just this perfect storm for, being at risk.
My only response to that is I have to comply with state law, and I apply state
Yes.
law to any project that comes into our office.
Okay, so that's the latter part of the question. So are we working at all with our neighboring fire agencies to figure out, what we can do in terms of response or responsive? And it's probably not going to be a whole lot of change, but I don't know, it just seems like the residents all seem to have the same concerns, especially in the unincorporated areas. And like Ladera, I mean, that's county, but like Weekend Acres is county, but the terrain is very similar to what Portola Valley and Woodside, and even that Woodside area near the Sequoia Tract, that area they're facing.
We can only comment on anything that's in our district. Anything that's outside of our district, I'm going to say that is a collaboration between the fire chiefs in regards to that.
Okay, so that's why I asked the chief first, and then I brought you in as the fire marshal, John. I mean, I don't know, Mark, have you heard any concerns about the need to collaborate?
Well, and I've met with Chief Lindner from Woodside, and we certainly talk about things. There's that one project, I think it's called the Wedge, that's on Stanford property that there's concerns over. But I try, again, just like I wouldn't want him coming in and weighing in on our policies and what we're doing. It's a conversation to see what's going on with them and what issues they have, see if we have similar issues and taking similar stances. But I mean, generally, everything's doing the same thing. Everyone's doing the same thing as our fire marshal is applying the state standards to it and, trying to stay out of the way politically on things. But, and we do understand that just like Director Bernstein was saying, as we add more people, whether it's through ADUs or just whatever things, for sure, a lot with no house on it is much safer than a lot with a house on it, or two, or three. So there are challenges, and we have challenges in California with our population growing and there not being sufficient housing. So within the direction that comes from the state and the county and our fire district board, we try and apply the fire code, to those projects. So,
Well, I would
Yes.
ask that, oh, sorry, I would ask that when we meet with the city of Menlo Park, and we have the joint meeting, hopefully sooner rather than later, that this item be on the agenda for a joint meeting.
it sounds
The
good.
housing element, the issue that Rob brought up, I think those are very good issues that we should be discussing jointly.
Is that you, Rob?
No, it's me, Chuck.
Jim, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you. I have several questions. I read recently that East Palo Alto has had issues with development in wastewater capacity, which led me to think about the infrastructure that will be asked to support this new development in Menlo Park and elsewhere. Before the meeting, Lynn Bramlett provided us with a list of approved and recently constructed projects. And I look at that square footage, and it's when you see that list, in one place, it's considerable. It's you see them in ones or twos, but when you see them in a more comprehensive way, as she provided us, it's really quite dramatic. So my question is this: the statutes that we operate under, is there any provision that requires an assessment of the underlying water supply infrastructure, pipe size, volume, pressure, in a comprehensive way? That's question one.
In that larger way that you asked the question, the answer is no, because it's the water purveyor's responsibility. However, when a developer wants to build a project, they are required to meet the building in California fire codes. And the California Fire Code does have a minimum water requirement based upon the building that they're proposing. And so that's the first thing that we look at is construction types, building size, et cetera. And they have to prove that the water supply that is available to them at their location can meet that minimum requirement. If they cannot meet that minimum requirement, they have some options in regards to changing construction, changing the size of the project, or they can actually provide the water themselves. So when you think about it, if you were to be building out on some rural farmland or something and build a building and there is no piped water, they can still build that building and they store the water. An example that we have in our district is IKEA. IKEA has 2 huge water tanks that has, I believe it's about 125,000 gallons of water because they were deficient in that water supply. And so they provided that deficient water. And so that is the first thing that we look at, but we do work with each of the water purveyors and they are aware of the increased water demands. Menlo Park has actually been really awesome at that and been increasing the pressure and the volume in their M2 area because they knew that that area was going to be growing and they knew the requirements that we had. And I'm actually working with the city of East Palo Alto, encouraging them to follow suit in regards to trying to have a high pressure line and larger lines for all of their future development so that it would actually reduce construction costs and allow a longevity within their city. But ultimately it's their decision, it's their system. My job is just to hold the developer accountable to provide whatever's required.
So I would assume it's not a self-certification process on the part of the developers in this determining whether or not there's adequate water available. Who is responsible for making that final determination? Is it the fire district or is it the water provider?
So the fire district verifies that water based upon the project that they're proposing. We have the water purveyor provide us with their water flows. So we know it comes from that owner of the water, verifying legally what they say they can provide. And then it's up to the owner and developer then to use a licensed engineer to prove that if there's any deficiencies or if they're going to develop or design any type of system that's going to be utilized on private property, then we actually, that is part of our plan review process, is to verify that their designs are going to meet the water requirements for that project. And that's normal business for us all the time.
And just one more question.
Sure.
Are you aware of any user fees being assessed on any of these projects that are under development? I know there was discussion 5 or 6
Sure.
years ago with Facebook and all their massive development. Are user fees assessed?
We call them maybe like impact fees.
Thank you, impact
Yeah,
fees.
impact fees are normal business for almost every project, whether it's, school districts typically have fees or, Mello-Roos. But pretty much every city, town, entity has some sort of impacts for development.
Are you aware of any impact fees that are assessed to support expansion of the water supply infrastructure?
I'm not involved in that part of the process. Sometimes it's a pre-calculated fee that would be available on their website for some development. And then depending on how big the development is, those are private negotiated things that we are not privy to.
Okay, thank you.
John, I'd like to follow up, and I want to do this respectfully because I appreciate the job you do and the thoroughness you do it with, and so forth. But I'm curious about how this works politically, and what part of this is policy at a board level, and what part of this is staff discretion. Are you?
Chuck, you went off mic, Chuck.
Correct, you're muted. There you go.
Was I muted for the whole thing?
Almost.
Okay, I apologize. Again, I wanted to do this respectfully, and I'm not in any way questioning your judgment or the kind of job you've done, because I applaud your thoroughness and care that you do all this. But I'm curious. I've been following some of the pressures that are in the local newspapers about the East Palo Alto Sanitary District Board, and how there's a big move afoot, I think sponsored by a number of developers, to dissolve the East Palo Alto Board because they're trying to impose fees on infrastructure to deal with the wastewater situation. So I'm curious about pressures on you and so forth. As a matter of policy, are you authorized as the fire marshal to approve waivers or alternative things, or is that something that would have to come to the board in terms of, if there's not sufficient water capacity, or if there's not sufficient access and so forth?
So there's two different components to what you asked. So if it's like a waiver or change of fees, or an impact like that, that does have to come to the fire board, unless if it follows under the fee waiver policy that the board has adopted. So there's a few projects that you guys have allowed, typically nonprofit type events and stuff that are doing fundraisers, that you allow waivers. That's pretty minor. When it comes to building a large development and project, and the project wants to build outside the scope of the code, there's provisions in the code that allow for different types of designs, and I have the authority under the code to either approve or deny of those, and to show and meet the intent of the code. So it has to meet or exceed what the original intent or code was going to apply. So we cannot accept anything less. That rarely happens just because it tends to be very expensive for the developer to do the kinds of studies and results and stuff to build something that would be outside of that realm. But that does occur occasionally.
Is there anything that the board could do or you would want the board to do to provide support for you? Or do you feel like you could, you're immune to those pressures or whatever?
I feel, for one, I feel extremely supported here. I've always felt very well supported by the fire chiefs and the board, and I feel extremely supported now. I don't feel the pressures that a lot of people may feel, especially with the names and the amount of money that is in the peninsula. But I feel like, after being here 22 years, I know most of the people, I'm comfortable. And anytime it becomes a political type item, I'm very quick to remove myself and place it into the fire chief's hands or the hands where it belongs, because I don't want there to be any type of conflict of interest or anything seem like that. So I very much like to stay in my lane and push that where it belongs. And I believe that the fire chief has already seen my example of that already in his few months here. So.
Okay, thank you. I want to say, Robert, I'll come to you in a second. I see Elizabeth Lewis's hand. As soon as we get through the board, Elizabeth, I'll come to you and call on you. But let me come back to the board members here first, and then I'll recognize you. Robert, please go ahead.
All I was going to provide was an update of information, which is something based on what I think you alluded to, as well as Jim alluded to, regarding the city of East Palo Alto. Just let you know what I know is going on here in the community. So I'll yield to Elizabeth because her hand has been up for a while.
Well, I'm going to take care of all the, please go ahead. I'm going to take
Okay.
care of all of our board members first, and then.
From what I know, two things, one about water, one about sewer. You mentioned about the city of East Palo Alto has been sanitation district. It's been under scrutiny and hot water for several years. It's just intensified with the fast pace that, or the pace that the current development, Ravenswood Business Shores development is taken on. The sanitary district, the biggest issue that developers were facing with the sanitary district that they wanted, and it started with the Light Tree Apartments, which is almost complete. They paid $2 million upfront, I think 2019, just right before COVID started, to get started on their project. And so now that they're ready to be connected, the sanitary district is asking for more money in the tune of $4 million more to connect to the sewer. The sanitary district is asking new projects over in the Ravenswood Business Shore development to connect. They're want to charge a $6 million fee to connect to the sewer, which is outrageous. To pay for infrastructure costs, improvements that is necessary in the city. LAFCO last week, there's been a complaint, and LAFCO have been looking into charges. They have done their reports, and you can go online. You can see some of the report. The last report today, they had commissioned to because the goal, it's all about whether to keep the sanitary, East Palo Alto sanitary district solvent or not, or disbanded. And last week, LAFCO voted, I think it's 6-1, to dissolve the East Palo Alto sanitary district. And the ideal goal was to turn over to the city. Not sure if the city wants. It may go to the city with West Bay eventually taking it over at some point. But that decision has been made by LAFCO. The water district, the city of East Palo Alto took over the water company but it's being managed by Valero, I think it is right now. I don't know if, John, you know the actual name of the water district, but I think that's the name of the water district. And the city's
Veolia.
Veolia, thank you. I pay my water bill every month. I forget their name, I'm sorry. So the pipes are pretty much in the same, need to be upgraded. And I think the developers are willing to help to some extent, but they're not willing to shoulder all of the costs. So that's where the city is, from what I know, what's going on. I don't know if, John, if you have any further update on that.
It's been an item that the city has been aware of for many years, and we are seeing the results of a last, inquiry. And so now it's up to the city to make decisions along with the citizens there. But it is something that we've been long well aware of, and the city in the meantime, though, has been addressing water issues. Water is improving through infrastructure there. And so now it's up to the city to address sanitary sewer so that they can hopefully have construction within the city.
Well, let me say, I don't know what the situation is. I know that I think we were perhaps wrongly led to believe that one of the reasons we had an ISO rating of 2 rather than 1 was because of East Palo Alto water. It appears that perhaps that was not true. We also heard stories from our former chief about a fear of connecting fire trucks to East Palo Alto water because he had visions of wooden pipes being sucked up into the pumps of the district and so forth. Now, again, this sounds alarmist and so forth, but that's what the board has been told in the past. And I feel like it's important for the board to have better information on all this. I think Jim's going to have some information for us during the ad hoc committee reports. But all this is really important stuff. There are policy decisions to be made, and I think we need to be kept abreast of all this. So I will go now to Elizabeth if there are no other board members with comments. Michelle, can you please bring Elizabeth into the conversation?
Yes. There I am. Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
Elizabeth.
So I'm sorry to barge in. I just heard what Virginia was commenting on about Atherton's housing element struggles and the rumors that maybe she heard that somewhere along Alameda de los Pulgas, there was a large piece of property for 62 units. I think that she may have been referring to the, and it wasn't that a house had been torn down. It was the one on the corner of Polhemus and Alameda de los Pulgas, a 5 acre lot that is not going to be on the element. The owner of the lot had indicated that they wanted to participate in the townhome overlay, but then realized that they did not want to. And so without a willing property owner, it's not very easy to convince HCD that you're going to be able to, build high density homes or even moderate density homes on that property over the next 8 years. So that will be removed from our element. Just clarifying. And that was only going to be about 26 or maybe 32, but never 62.
Okay. Yes, I was referring. I didn't think it was that property, Elizabeth. So I don't know. That's just what I heard. Yeah, near Barry. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is whatever happens, just know that the fire district wants to work with y'all.
Near Barry. Well, yeah, that's not on the Alameda.
No, I didn't. I don't think I said Alameda. But anyway, maybe.
I thought you did.
Okay.
Just clarifying.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome to the meeting also.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any comments about this item, item number 13 here? Okay, well, John, thank you for the update and information. Chief, thank you for this. This is something I think we're all interested in and want to stay abreast of, and I don't think anybody wants to compromise safety here. So thank you for, sticking to your guns on those things. We'll move now to number 14, which is an item, Robert's item. It's kind of an expanded report from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Ad Hoc Committee.
Michelle, Michelle sent out, I think 2 documents to the board members. I hope you had a chance to read it. So I have a little small presentation that I would like to share with you. So it's, Michelle, do I go to the share screen?
Yes, you do.
Go to share screen.
Yeah, and you have your document, your PowerPoint open?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
One participant can share at a time. Okay, I hit that. So.
Good. Yeah, if it kicks me out, that's good.
And do I have to minimize my screen?
You don't, well, your document should pop up when you click share screen.
I see, this will stop others sharing the screen.
That's okay. You click, that's okay, or whatever
Yes.
it's asking you to do.
Oh, okay, there it is.
There you go.
Oh,
It hasn't come up on our end yet, though.
here you go. I got it. There you go.
Perfect.
Okay, so let me.
Robert, that's page B. Did you want to start with page A?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get the PowerPoint to work at this point.
On the left side, if you click, yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm just trying to move my screen around so I don't have everybody blocking. I can't see my document, so just bear with me for 1 second. Anyway, I'll just get started. And
We can see your documents perfectly.
oh, you can? Oh,
Yeah.
why am I having difficulties? Okay, no worries. All right, so let me. So tonight I wanted to go over certain where we are with the committee have been working on, and we need to we're at the point now we need to really get the board to kind of buy into, give us more directions at where we need to go at this point in time. So as you know, we was assigned the task of focusing in on diversity, equity, and inclusion. In terms of, it was first introduced by our President Bernstein, developing the ad hoc committee to move forward. And so the committee have been meeting every month to talk about these 3 areas, and really, does it really apply to the district? And so what we have came up with during this period of time, we developed a workflow, and I think I went over this with everyone within the district 2 months ago. And here we are at getting ready to do a survey, to begin to look at, analyze the data, and to try to focus in on key areas of the diversity, equity, and inclusion within the district. We have developed a metrics, and then metrics, and then what I've sent out to you, and I think I went over it a month or so ago, very briefly to let you know. And I'm hoping that we can get your buy-in and approval and okay to with these particular categories, because within this metrics, it focuses in on employee life cycle experiences and makeup. And within that, each one of them, for example, here on the employee life cycle, we looked at hiring, representation, retention, and advancement. And on the other one, the employee's experience, the job satisfaction and engagement, employee resource groups that exist or don't exist within the district, and how accessible and accessibility of all of this. The other one, the last two focusing on leadership and supplies. And we're hoping that, you know, I don't know if I should ask questions if anybody have any comments about any other areas that they would like for the committee, the ad hoc committee to look at. If there are, please, either you can, let's talk about it right now, or else you can send us your comments and we can integrate that into our document. Out of the upshot of all of this, really to kind of understand and prioritize diversity, equity, inclusion, there is a metrics that we need to focus on, and it's called an equity indicator, those equity indicators. And it focusing on education, access to employment, public safety, community engagement, leadership development, the economic side of it, accessibility, retention, employee resource group and participation, and job satisfaction and advancement. Each one of these has our focus. We need to look at trying to collect data in each one of these areas. And from that, also, I want to reiterate again, if there are other areas that may be missing, and I think the sheet, one of the other sheets I sent to you was that previous document. If there are other areas that you want the committee to look at, please let us know so we can add that to the mix. So each one is like an education. These are some of the areas that we need to collect data, some data on to kind of understand where we are with diversity, equity, inclusion. Accessibility and employment, for example, for the workforce. How many existing minorities and women firefighters do we have? You know, how many administrative positions are being held by minority women and other diverse classification? And there are others, public safety, in terms of focus on communities and population of people who most vulnerable to fire and is devastating impact. How many people, within the communities we serve, how much representation is within the fire district? The other area we're looking to try to collect data on is community engagement. For example, how many people who participated in the program from East Palo Alto, Miller Park, and Atherton. Collect data on where people live and the type of classes taken. Leadership development. We want to examine the fire district demographic data to look specifically at leadership in management, and hiring and recruitment. Identify actively seeking candidates with diverse and non-traditional backgrounds to apply. How do we go about doing that? Do we actually do it? Take that extra effort. And the area of focus would be looking at our applicant pool, screening criteria, and diversity of the fire district hiring panel. Who actually sit on those panels when there's an opening come up? Are we seeking out other individuals who may not be traditional? And the economic part of it, side of it as well. So the goal is to, just went through that part of it. So those are the areas that we wanted to, that we need to collect data on. And we're hoping that there are other areas, if there are other areas that any of the board members might want, need, and would like to have us to explore. So we feel like we're at our next steps, and the next steps are We want the board to approve DEI ad hoc committee work plan. If there are any questions you may have, let's resolve it if we can resolve it now. But we need to get the board approval on that. We want the board to approve the metrics, the focus area. That's why I send it to you so that you can look at it to see if there are other things that need to be included, things that you feel uncomfortable with as a board when we start go about collecting this data. The board approved equity indicators. There may be more that we might not have gotten to that we want to make sure that we've been inclusive. We want the board to approve contract. We want to contract some and or all of the DEI work to be bidded out, subject to the fire chief and human resource director to determine as to what part of the work they want to do in-house. And so that's pretty much the presentation. But mainly we just need to have your blessing to move forward. So that's pretty much it that I wanted to talk to you about, but mainly to get to the board approval to move forward.
Robert, let me just ask you a real quick question. So
Sure.
when you talk about work plan, is that your second slide?
Let me see, second slide.
I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm not sure what it is that is the work plan, but it looks like, no, the one after that,
Yeah, I know it's gotta
Oh.
get to it.
that one.
That's the workflow.
Is that what you're talking about us approving?
Well, yes, that in and of itself. If there's any other things that we might be missing in that, but really what's inside the work plan is this. We want to make sure that we have captured everything that the board, areas that the board want to explore in its ABC categories or slides. So this is the focus area that we are looking to focus on. These are the equity indicators which we need to go in a little bit deeper on, and we want to gather data from to see how much exists here within the district and how much is absent, so that we can begin to fill in these categories, which is, that I've mentioned here about collect the areas where we want to collect the data in, so that we can have a profile. And that from that analysis, we want to bring back to the board, and then we want to develop a strategy at that point about what to do to fulfill some of the gaps that may be missing in the district.
Good. Thanks. Jim had a question. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, perhaps it's just me, but I saw the email that Michelle sent out either yesterday or today that included the DEI framework and understand and prioritize DEI. I don't feel like I've seen the slides that you were displaying now, Robert. Have those been displayed before?
Which one, Jim? Let me go back.
Well, I mean, your entire presentation.
Have
we seen it before?
The next steps, this is first time.
Okay.
But let me go to, this is what you're making reference to?
Well, really, all of the slides, I don't think any of the slides are familiar to me, like this one, the DEI metrics.
Yeah, early on we have talked to you about, I think it's about maybe 2 or 3 months ago. It was in my report, but it wasn't I didn't show you these slides, but I talked through each one of these areas. But yes, so the first time you've seen this slide, I sent you the slides so that you can take a look at it. And when I gave my report, I was talking from this slide as well as this slide right here. I was talking from the workflow.
Well, if you could scroll down a bit,
Sure.
Robert, there was a worksheet with check boxes.
Yeah, let me get to it. Are you talking about this one?
Right, and there's 2 or 3.
These are just, when I first did the PowerPoint, I had everything on this sheet, and then I said, oops, maybe I should do it individually. So that's what I went through, and it's the same information, but it's in 3 separate boxes, 2 separate boxes to break it down a little bit easier than having it fully all over everywhere. So it's the same information.
Okay, just a different format.
This is a different format, yes. So your question?
No, I just, like I say, it didn't look familiar to me in this format. Perhaps it's.
Yeah, this is a new slide right here. The committee have looked at it. We talked about it, but it's a new slide. I should have sent this one to you guys as well, but I didn't want to overload you because most of it's taking this information in a broader scale, reducing it down to these equity indicators in these areas. So if you look back up here, for this one, we're talking about hiring, representation, retention, advancement, job satisfaction, employee participation, accessibility, and leadership and supplies. Those are the broader areas that we wanted to try to explore within the district. Do they exist? If they do, how far are we into trying to, do we have policies in place to try and capture more of a diverse population without getting into these areas of quotas? Because it's not about quotas, it's about having a fair and equitable access, which is basically trying to include as many people as possible who are qualified. But I don't know if Francine is still on the line, if she can share with you some of the data that we have, she have shared with us as a committee on just some preliminary information about where the district is. So Francine, are you there? Maybe not. But anyway, we do have some preliminary, Francine has put together some preliminary data that we have looked at and talked.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Sorry, I had to be unmuted. I'm still without power.
Oh.
So I'm sitting in the dark with my flashlight of a phone. And so I'm sorry, I don't have, like, everything I have is on my laptop, but I don't have internet or power. But I think you did a great job of explaining all the work that the ad hoc committee has done. And I do have some data. I just can't access it to share it with the board. But basically, the data that I have is the demographics of our workforce, as well as some the demographics for the district that we serve, and then also a breakdown of our last firefighter recruitment that we did, and at each phase, who was kind of excluded. So, how many we had how many applied, and then when we invited to the written exam, how many of each maybe ethnic or gender category were excluded at that phase. And then when we invited to the oral exam, how many were excluded and included, and then when we appointed. So it's kind of eye-opening, and it really does show that we do have to do a little bit more work to kind of remove some of those barriers for for kind of our line positions. And I would like to share that with the board. when I can access that data. But I think what Director Jones is kind of expressing is that we would like some direction from the board as to next steps. Obviously, it's huge, as you can see from all the research that the committee has done. It doesn't just affect employees or our recruitments, but it goes really, really deep into policy, into programs that we offer, and just trying to kind of break that down and come up with a plan and goals on how we want to address it. And it's kind of interesting, and I wanted to mention, and of course I don't have any of my data, but I went to a really good conference on DEI, and it was more for private sector. And Google shared their in the conference their DEI plan. And what was, I think, interesting to me with that is just basically how long it has taken them to get as far as they've come. And it just goes to show it's not something that we can do in a year or, in a short period of time. I believe it was they appointed a DEI officer, and it wasn't until, and I might be wrong, but like 9 years later before they actually provided implicit bias training for all their employees. And out of all their employees, I think they had about 55 to 60% go through the training. And they kind of did this timeline, but it shows that they spent a lot of kind of time and resources to make this important. So I'm not sure. I feel like I'm kind of rambling because I don't have a computer to look at. But yeah. So if you had any questions, I'd be happy, but I would like to share that information with the board and then get direction from the board as to, where we start from here, because obviously if we kind of parse this out, we can tackle, little steps. We can make strides for sure. If we wanted, to do something more comprehensive, then maybe, we need more assistance with that.
Francine, could I ask you a question? This is Chuck.
Sure.
I was
Hi.
curious. I'm curious about the nature of the data. I'm getting
Getting echo.
what data does the district have? I'm talking about employees now.
Mhm.
What is it allowed to collect? What does it collect?
So when employees apply, it's voluntary if they want to complete a kind of self-identification form. But when we hire, because we have to complete, we do EEO reporting, then we collect the data, which would be their gender and ethnicity. And so it just goes into all of the EEO categories for our EEO4 reporting. And then you have the option of saying, that they decline maybe to state. They could say that if, once we appoint them into their position, they can decline to state, or they can say 2 or more races, which is, not as kind of easily definable, but it's all of the EEO4 categories. So they identify gender and ethnicity. And so that's the data we have, unless they decline to state.
And but what about some of these other things Robert referred to, like family income and number of children and things like that?
So we don't collect any information on family income and again, I don't have the slides in front of me, so I'm not sure in that case if Director Jones was referring to citizens or employees when he was speaking about income, or I don't recall.
I think Chuck may have been referring to the economics part of it. What that section focused in on, do the district, who are the district suppliers? Do the district make a conscious effort to invite more than the standard suppliers that the district may have been using for the last 100 years? or are they open, do they have open bidding process and make conscious effort of seeking out, sending out bid, try to solicit bid from a variety of different vendors, or do they stick with the same one? That's the economic part of diversity. It doesn't stop at hiring, but you are when you are looking for a supplier for whatever. Do you go to the same source, or do you have an open bid to go out to a conscious effort to contact other folks who may be different? So this is the kind of data areas that we want to collect more data. And I think the data, if you just look, if once, and we can, Francine can put it together and send it to you. Maybe we can have it at another closed session, and you can really see the data that some of the process that have went on. There are disparities just from a quick brush. It's not to say that it's conscious, but it's when you do certain things over 100 years, it becomes part of a routine that you may not be aware that's impacting, that could impact and do impact the opportunities for folks that may not necessarily be part of the norm. And so that's what this whole DEI thing is all about, is trying to look at those areas. How do we grade ourselves on that? I don't know. I don't have any yardstick. I don't have any measure. But some of the data, that preliminary data, once Francine is able to get it into your hand, you begin to see, and hopefully you see the same thing that we have saw in the data. Yes, Jim, I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Robert.
No, I can go for Dave.
Okay. When we started this process, I thought the focus was going to be on recruitment and in hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're talking about issues, purchasing, program delivery, the community presentations and whatnot. I don't take issue with anything that I've read, and it's all very familiar to me in my background. There are, I feel like I need to know, I want to know more about our hiring and recruitment process right now. I've been here almost 3.5 years now. I don't know what our process is. So I would like to see that in substantial detail before I sign off on a DEI plan.
Well, see, part of what you don't know, what we don't have, what you don't know, what I don't know, we need to understand where we are. And that's what you're looking for, the recruitment part of it, right? But where we are, we need to understand what is our recruitment policy. Who have flowed through the district just take over the last 10 years. Who have, if we can get data on who have flowed through it. And this one particular bit of information that Francine gave us, it showed us out of how many people, Francine, 600 applicants, I think it was, and that got broken into different groups of people. And then who passed a written exam, and then who actually got invited to the interview. And that was
Robert,
zero.
I am anxious, I am anxious to see all that. And we've talked about a scholarship type program to get people through, paramedic school or through, the community college. And I like all that idea, but I don't, I guess I need this, I would like to see, Francine made reference to data that she's collected, and I would very much like to see that. Again, I don't know what our recruitment policy is one thing, practice is another.
Sure.
So, and I would like to see them both. What do we say we're doing, and what are we doing? I would like to see that, and then have the discussion of, and I'll just focus on recruitment and retention right now. But what do we want to do going into the future? So all I'm saying is, I'd like to study what you've sent us here tonight. I'd like to see or hear Francine's, the results of her data collection. And I don't know, do we do a special meeting around this or, but that's right. That's
Sure.
what I need.
And the information, and just kind of briefly, the collecting the data is going to be important. Just like the small amount of data that Francine did on her own was just a tip of the iceberg. And in order for us to really delve into this whole metrics that I have up on the screen right now, there's data in there that we need to collect. She took it upon herself to collect that bit of information. So and I hear what you're saying, Jim, that if we had all of the data in all of the areas that we can begin to see a pattern of where we are and where we need to be. If you want, and that's why giving the board right now, whatever data that the Francine had already put together, I think would be fantastic. But beyond that, these areas, especially the employee life cycle areas and those indicators will give us more data to start making policy decisions about where we need to go with it. So I would love to have a special session around this. I would love to, and Francine's going to get you to what we have right now, but there are a lot of more information that the board really need to have based upon these equity indicators, all these different areas right here, which would tell you a lot more, and so that we can then start crafting policy and procedures about where to move forward. So yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, in terms of data, but we can't get there with collecting information until we the board kind of give us okay, at least to allow Francine, them, they have other work they have to do, and I don't know. One of the things on the action plan was to kind of understand about where do we go from here. Especially this number 4, because both the chief and Francine got a lot of work. How much time they got to bite off on some of these areas, or do we need to hire someone to come in to do some of the other heavy lifting that is necessary to get across it. And so if anything is to try to focus in on getting to that goal. But I hear you in terms of being able to have the data to move forward.
Well, I'd like to second kind of what Jim said. I think from a priority standpoint, there seem to be 3 areas that we could be looking at. One is this idea of the employment side of it. The second related to the community we serve and are we equitably serving our community? And the third related to things like vendors and so forth. To me, the most important of those 3 is the first one. I'm not saying the others aren't important. I'm just saying I really would like to see what we're doing with regard to employment. And I would love to see the Francine's presentation. I think it would help us understand the extent to which we may or may not have a problem and kind of what the highest priorities, and it would help us decide whether we need a consulting firm or an additional person or something like that to help deal with this. But I think we need a little bit more. We need to see a preview of this data. So I would love to schedule a session, either part of our regular meeting or a special session where Francine could present what it is we know right now. And she said she was shocked at some things. Well, I think maybe all of us should be shocked if that's what's there. But so that's where I'd like to go.
Sure, I get that. Because we were shocked. That's why I put all this stuff together. Saying I'm shocked into this, and I want you guys to get shocked into this too. So
Right.
let's shock you. I'm okay with the Rosé test kind of thing. So.
Let me ask you a question, Robert.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be helpful, maybe it wouldn't be. Do you think it would make sense to do some sort of a preview of this with the Human Resources Committee, or do you think we should just go right to the board with the presentation first?
What presentation, the data?
Yeah, Francine's data.
I think we need to just give it to the board all at once, because the Human Resource Committee is great, but I think that's when we get ready to get into policy issues around that. They have the Human Resource Committee kind of hammer through what those policy issues are, but we need data. We need the data in order to kind of begin to craft a plan. And maybe Virginia has something she want to add to this conversation.
I do. I think we should present it to the board. And actually, when we first saw the data, it was obvious that it was something that Robert and I and Francine thought that, and the chief, I think, also thought that the board should see, but we didn't feel like it had been cooked enough. But I think we're at a point, Robert and Francine, where, yeah, I think that we should show the data to the board and to the public, really, because it's not just to the board, it's to the public. Francine's done a lot of great work in collecting data, and I think it's compelling. So I would rather do that than put it into another committee at this point.
Okay, I wasn't pushing the committee. I just wanted to understand what your preference is. So let's schedule that for an upcoming board meeting in July if we can. We'll talk to Francine, see if she could be ready, talk to the chief about what else is on there for July and try to get that in. I don't know how much time Francine would need, but we can pursue that.
Well, I would like to, it would be my preference if we can have it a few minutes in the closed session. It's just my preference to do it then and then see where that takes us. But I think at that point, I really would like, yeah, because I think you'd be shocked too. So, but
Robert, if you, rather than even discuss it here, just because it may be a sensitive issue, could you consult with our attorney and see if it qualifies for a closed session and do that offline, and then either you or he report back to the chief or me or whatever, so that we know how to do that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to ask you what it is that would qualify as a closed session meeting in a public session. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that astute. I'll leave that up to Steve.
Okay, well, would you please follow up with him and ask him if whatever it is you'd like to do in closed session, if that qualified?
Sure. It'd be great if we have our meeting, coming up soon too, because we always meet the last week of the month. So we'll have our meeting next week. Maybe we can, if Steve got time, he can come and we can share everything with him at that point in time. Barring that we don't have a heat wave in Francine out of commission.
Okay. Virginia, you still have your hand up. Is that just an oversight or did you want to say something more?
No, it's an oversight.
Okay, thank you.
One last thing on me. If the board members, I know you got this see this special district report. I think it was I just got it in my packet for January and February. It has a great article, a really good article. Jim, I think it would probably hit home with you. And it talks about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I'll be sure and look at
and a
it.
roadmap for that. Because it's pretty much in line with what we're trying to do is build a roadmap to exploring this at our district.
Any other comments on this report from any of the board members? Let me go to the public then and see if there are any public comments on this item. Any public comments? Item number 14.
If anyone has a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you called in. And I see none.
Okay. Robert, thank you very much for the report. And
Thank the
Virginia,
committee.
thank you very much for your participation in developing this. We'll proceed from here.
Okay,
Okay, number 14 then, we're in, I'm 15, excuse me, the committee reports, emergency preparedness.
It's pretty much what we spent time at our meeting. What we went over today that was in the policy manual change. Trying to throw around the idea of trying to understand what is our purpose as a committee. And so that's where that statement came out. And so that's pretty much what I'm talking about, that aspect of it.
Okay.
Virginia, I don't know, and Chief, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay.
So that's it.
Human resources. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. We talked about the benefits for all employees, and Francine did a great chart for us that we requested that all the board members get, that break down all the benefits of all the different classifications of employees. And we're going to discuss the particular areas at our next meeting.
Yeah, that was, Francine did a fantastic job on that chart.
Yeah. Robert, you want to add anything, Robert?
No, other than Francine did a fantastic job on the chart.
She did, absolutely. Thank you, Robert. That's it, Chuck. for us.
I'm embarrassed because maybe I missed something, but was that chart distributed to the whole board or just to the committee?
Just to
No,
the
we
committee.
asked for it to be distributed to the whole board.
I don't think I saw it, but it's possible I missed it somehow. Was it sent as a separate document or as part of?
Well, we had requested it that all the board members would have it.
I may have it and I might be behind on my email. So
Hi,
hi.
this is Francine. Sorry, I was just unmuted. Again, I can't check. I thought I sent it, but if I didn't, I will resend it to everyone as soon as I have my laptop working. So if not tonight, then tomorrow morning.
All right. Hey, thanks, Francine. It was a great job.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
And I am behind on stuff, so I apologize, Francine. I may have missed it.
I may not have sent it, so I'll check. I'm sorry.
Strategic planning, Jim?
We do not meet this month. However, we will be meeting next month.
Okay. And Virginia, finance.
Pretty much everything that we discussed was on tonight's agenda, so thanks for approving all of that. I'm particularly happy that we approved the pay down of another, $4.8 million in the UALs, because now since we started doing this, we've paid down over $54 million, and I think that's really good. So thanks for approving everything we put on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. Liaison reports, Atherton, that's Jim.
Nothing to report.
Okay, and Virginia, did you have anything about Atherton? I think you mentioned to me you talked to someone from Atherton or whatever.
Oh, no. I mean, the only thing I have to report is that I was going to do it in the director's report, but basically to the library opening.
Oh, okay. And then East Palo Alto is me, and I have not gotten back with the mayor in terms of a meeting, but now that Menlo Park is moving forward, lit a fire under me and I just need to get back to him. We've traded emails, but not conversations. So I will be contacting him. Menlo Park.
Yeah, pretty much what the chief said. I mean, we were trying to get in touch with the the interim city manager, who's now the permanent city manager, and we'll just be scheduling a meeting. So I think we're on the good track, mainly because I think there's more stability within their city government as well. So now I'll work with the chief to get that meeting scheduled, to the joint meeting. I think it'll be good for both the city and the fire district.
Okay, County of San Mateo, Rob?
We did not meet, Chuck.
Okay. And the San Mateo Joint Powers Authority, Virginia?
Yeah, so we had a meeting in May. I think it was the latter part of May, and it was a quarterly meeting. But it was also the first meeting we had of the year since the January meeting was canceled. And as the chief touched on, when he gave his report, there was a lot of discussion around the transition of the executive director, John Odell, and actually his executive assistant. So they're going to be moving on. But I think there were a couple of significant things that I got out of this. And the first one was that, I'm kind of embarrassed. Well, I'm not embarrassed to say, but I will say this. When we were dealing with the compensation of the executive director, it looked like the management committee had approved basically a spiking situation that I had kind of called out. And because, because I kind of called out with the help of the chief as well, just kind of making sure I was reading things correctly. We were able to work that. And that was kind of disappointing to see that, it was almost as if nothing had really been read by the board. And so I was glad that we were able to, make the difference and show everyone that, it is worth paying attention to the agenda and the staff reports. So that was the one thing. The other thing is upon the retirement of the executive director, the temporary replacement will be Chief Myers, who is the chief, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, the chair of the Chiefs Committee, and also Clay Holstein, who's the city manager of Brisbane, I think. They're all part of the North County Fire Authority. And a lot of the HR functions are out of Daly City, which was the reason for this spiking situation. Apparently that's been a practice that has been in existence for some time, among other things. Anyway, as the executive director transitions out, Ron Myers and Clay Holstein will be working, I think, part-time to fulfill those roles until they understand what kind of structure they want to have in those roles, because I think that it's possible that the cost will decrease. I think they're going to hopefully revamp, and I've requested that we be involved, all of us be involved with looking what this new structure should be and could be, since generally these decisions were left to the management committee, which I don't think has really represented our interests as well as they could. So as we move forward with figuring out what this structure will be, I will keep everyone on our board apprised of what's happening, and I'm sure Chief Lorenzen will keep us apprised, or at least me apprised, on what is being discussed at the chief's meeting. I've asked that we don't wait until the very end of 2022, since we literally only have 2 more meetings the rest of the year. That doesn't mean that we can't call a special meeting, since this structure could be very important and can affect how things are funded, the ambulance service and who manages it, and all of that. So I'm hoping that by September, which is when our next meeting will happen, we'll have more information, rather than waiting until the last part of the year. So that's all I can say right now, but I'm hoping that we'll be involved a little bit, and I hope that we'll have a special meeting and not wait until September, to say, well, this is what we recommended, and when in fact that isn't necessarily the best thing. But I just wanted to give you an update and let you know that the chief and I are keeping an eye on what's happening. I think there could be some interesting opportunities. So I'll give y'all any updates that I get. Mark, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add from me. Thank you.
Any questions?
I realize I probably should be asking, as we had number 15 and number 16 here, if there were any comments from the public on either the committee reports or on the liaison reports. Anything from the public?
Anyone has a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you called in. I see none.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to the ad hoc committee reports. Robert, you didn't have anything further on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, did you?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. And Jim, water companies and water pressure.
Really the next strategic planning committee meeting will be addressing some of those issues and expanding the discussion that we had this evening on infrastructure and development in the district. So I'll have more report after the strategic planning committee meeting in July.
You've asked for data from our staff about water company issues and how that relates to ISO, right? And is that what you're going to be discussing at the committee meeting?
Yes.
Okay, good. And in terms of the ambulance services, that seems to have been an issue that's died down. That ad hoc committee may never meet this year, but we didn't know that in December, January when we prepared this. So for now, that committee is on hold.
Yeah, Chuck. So if there are any updates about input for a potentially new structure or opportunity for a new structure, that could be a good topic for the ad hoc committee to discuss in terms of understanding what our interests would be. I mean, since we have so many residents in our district, and I just want to make sure that, the JPA board is doing right by us and our constituents. So I'll keep y'all posted.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, so the problems arose very suddenly and when they canceled meetings for 6 months or whatever, it was hard for your group there to provide much help to us. So, and that's why I had this ad hoc committee, but it hasn't been necessary up to now. So if it becomes necessary, we'll revive it. I'll move to 18 then, which is reports and requests of directors. Anything from anybody?
Chuck?
Yes. Go ahead.
I kind of touched on it last, just up in, I think, item 16. I attended the Atherton Library opening. I think you all got an invitation to it, and it was beautiful. So if Elizabeth Lewis is on here, congratulations. I know it was a lot of hard work over the years, and it was a beautiful library, and I was happy to see the crew from Station 3 there. And of course, they were very popular. And I think that Chief Lorenzen, Mark, didn't you do a story time reading there as well later on in the day?
I did. I read a couple books to some kids and some grown-ups.
Great. So it was a great event.
Okay. Well, Atherton's really taken a step forward with their new civic building and now their library being finished and so forth. So it's quite a difference from what was there 5 years ago.
Doug?
It's really beautiful.
Go ahead, Jim.
In reviewing the board policy and procedures manual in preparation for the meeting tonight, one of the things I looked at was the chief's appraisal process. And I think it was put in place in 2012, and it looked a little stale to me. So I was going to suggest that perhaps, with Chief Lorenzen being new, that this might be a good time for the HR committee to dust that off, and maybe they'll endorse it and say, yeah, this is what we should be doing. But Francine's new, the chief is new, and I think it might be a good time just to review that process. I throw that out for consideration.
You actually jumped into something I was going to do as part of the president's report, but let me expand on what you just said. I think there's really two parts to this. First, yes, I agree with you. I think the form that we've used in the past is not ideal. It doesn't quite ask the right questions, it seems to me, and so forth. And I found I had to just write my comments in there, but they didn't really fit exactly. So I think that whole process would be good for the HR committee to look at. And so I would ask the HR committee to take that on as really a kind of a longer term. I mean, this will take several months. The second part of what I wanted to say, though, is under our employment contract with the chief, we were to conduct an interim evaluation 3 to 6 months into his tenure. And we're in that period right now. And I would like us to proceed and in this case, use that old form. Again, it's not very good, but this is kind of a informal evaluation. We would discuss the results of it in closed session as per our normal procedure. But I would like to ask, and I don't know who would spearhead this, whether it's the chief himself or whether it's Francine, but I'd like to kind of dust off that process that we've used in the past where the form gets distributed to the 5 board members. We've got a week or two to fill it out, and it goes back and gets compiled by Hanson Bridget. And then we get a single document that we discuss, we give to the chief and meet with the chief to do an evaluation. If somebody has a different suggestion or approach, that would be fine, but that's what I was going to recommend that we proceed with right away. So I'm jumping ahead, Jim, but I'm tailing on to what you said. Go ahead, Virginia. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I think that it's time to kind of update that. I mean, there are two things here. There's the process, and then there's the performance review form. So that's how I see it. And I think that things can probably be tweaked, on the form. I mean, yeah, leave it up to the HR committee. But if you like the process, that's fine too. But I think we should look at these two things. I mean, they go hand in hand, but at the same time, you don't have to, you can keep one and not the other. And I think you'd be fine. But I think that the form may need to be updated. Yeah, we put that form together when I first got on the board. That was 10 years ago. So it's kind of, they probably could use some updating.
Let me ask you, Rob and Robert, do you guys, would you be willing to put that on your agenda for the next HR committee meeting?
Sure. Right, Robert? We take it on.
Yeah, we'll take it on.
But in the meantime, is everybody all right with proceeding? We're supposed to do this first evaluation 3 to 6 months, and we're coming up on 6 months, and we're in the 5th month now, I think. So I'd like to proceed with that without just doing it kind of informally using the old form and so forth. Is everybody all right with doing it that way?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. Francine.
Yeah, if I could ask Francine, could you take it upon yourself?
Yeah, Chuck, Francine's our expert, so I would yield to her to come up to look at the old form and for her to give us a recommendation with our HR committee.
Hi. Sorry.
Director Bernstein, Francine, hang on a second. This is Steve. I'm sorry to jump in. This is starting to go pretty deep into the issue of evaluating the chief, and this is not at all on your agenda. What's agendized is just a report from the president. So I would suggest maybe agendizing something, perhaps in a closed session, if you want to discuss the performance review of your chief, including the process.
Steve,
Okay.
don't you think I mentioned this under the requests of directors, and Jim had made a request and I was expanding on it. It seems that it is in keeping with the request of the directors to update the evaluation process.
You know, if you'd like to suggest that something be placed on the agenda for the HR committee, that sounds fine, but we've now had 3 directors discussing, asking questions to Francine, who was about to, it seemed to me you were engaging in an actual discussion of what process to use. And
Okay.
so that's my advice. You of course can talk as you wish.
Okay.
I agree. I just asked that we look at 2 things instead of just one, that's all.
Okay, so we can stop the discussion. It seems like we have a consensus that we'd like to update these things, and I will make a request separately. We need to adhere to the contract provisions, and so I'll go to Francine directly and ask that we start that process. I had one other thing. Jim, I didn't. You were.
Oh, I'm done. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. I just had one other thing that I'm either reporting this as a director or as part of the president's report. I'm not sure which, but I'm still very, very concerned about fireworks. And this is something that there's been some kind of happy talk in the newspapers about how much it's improved and this and that. But unless you live in the Willows, a suburban park or something like that, we still have, this sounds like a war zone on some nights. Now, I do think it is a little bit better than it was in the past, but my poor dog goes crazy for perhaps half an hour to an hour every night. There are neighbors who, there's some people who have PTSD and who are awakened from sleep by these huge booms at 2 or 3 in the morning. I myself, at about midnight, I walked up to the housing project up on Manhattan and Woodland Avenue. And there were probably 100 residents out in the driveway there, and they're shooting off professional type fireworks up in the air with explosions going on. And I actually was trying to be a little bit cautious because I was a little bit fearful for my life there, being, at that hour and with the numbers of people there. But there was a Palo Alto police car there and one officer only, just standing there watching it. And I know I empathize with the police here who are trying to be accepted by the community and not rile people for what they consider minor things. But nobody was making any effort to stop this. And the police officer, I waited till it ended. It ended, the police officer then left and people went to bed. But this is like at midnight or later than midnight. And I just think we need to be talking to our constituent agencies, or certainly where these things are happening, because this represents a fire danger. There was a fire in one of the, one of the garages here a year or 2 ago. I don't remember when that it burned, but all this stuff is just raining down on residential apartments there on Manhattan. And I think it's just a huge danger. And I know we're advertising for fireworks safety and not to use fireworks and so forth. Which is probably okay, but I don't think there was one person in this group that didn't know that fireworks were illegal, and no one really cared. And at least the police were there, but they weren't doing anything, which is kind of tacit approval. So I'm saying this primarily for John's benefit and for the chief's benefit, but just to know that this is a very serious problem. And, if the whole apartment block burned down, my guess is there would be some repercussions, or somebody would start pointing fingers. And the time to do something is now. And the worst victims of all this, in my opinion, are the people that live in these apartment complexes. I mean, they're the ones that are awakened, little kids, older people, and lots of veterans and so forth. So anyway, I just wanted to raise the alert on this.
Okay, my families.
I'm sorry, Virginia, go ahead.
Oh, so I agree with you. I mean, we're hearing it on the west side as well. And not at midnight, at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, because I will, I can sometimes sit outside. I sit outside and they're going off, and I've heard complaints from a few neighbors. So, I don't know. I don't know what we can do. Maybe that this is something that we have to work with the sheriff's office with, or Menlo PD, Menlo Park PD. I don't know, but I know that people are concerned, especially in this unincorporated area near where I live, where you've got Sharon Hills Park. I mean, it's like major open space, and near Susan Dale at Valparaiso. Yeah, it's very dry there and dry near the duck pond. And I think people are concerned. And I mean, Mark, I don't know what we can do. I mean, I know that we've had ads and stuff, and has nothing to do with that. But I don't know if they're working, or I mean, I know that you and I have talked about this, and we don't have to talk about this now. But I just think that if our constituents are concerned, then I don't know how do we fix this besides working with law enforcement?
And just very quickly, and yes, we do have an active advertising campaign. I'm not sure if it's successful or useful or not, but we're trying. Most of it lies in law enforcement's hands to enforce. We were hopeful that the Sharon Hills fireworks show would actually move forward this year, but there were some challenges with some Menlo Park ordinance with the city, because we are always supportive of a paid professional show versus individual shows, and it's a challenge. We're going to add some additional staffing on 4th of July to help us deal with the consequences of illegal fireworks. And the one fortunate silver lining of COVID and the supply chain issues coming from China is we've seen a pretty significant reduction in the numbers of illegal fireworks, even though you're still hearing them. This is just from what I've heard from Atherton, Menlo, and EPA police chiefs. So that's it for me.
Yeah, I'll just add, by the way, Mark, I don't, you might not even be aware of this, but on the 4th of July, we need to be aware of major gunfire going off as well. People do find bullets in their gutters and things like that. I mean, you might hear literally hundreds of rounds of semi-automatic weapons fire and things. So make sure the firefighters have their helmets on when they're out there, because it's a dangerous place. Any other comments? Okay, I will move to public comment number 3. Michelle, would you?
Yes, if anyone has a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if you called in. And Director Bernstein, I see none.
Okay, well, that concludes our meeting then. The next meeting is on July 19th. And if there's no further comment, I will adjourn the meeting and say goodnight to everybody. Thank you for your participation.